There's a reason experienced campers tell you never to set up a tent anywhere near a marked trail junction late at night. You're basically advertising your location to anyone or anything walking through those woods after dark. I learned that lesson during the summer of 2019. I was 21 at the time, on a solo 4-day backpacking trip through the Cougar Falls Wilderness area in Oregon. It was an isolated stretch of old-growth forest, thick fir trees, deep ravines, and miles of dense fern brush. Cell service died about 10 minutes after leaving the trailhead parking lot. On my third day out, I made a classic beginner mistake. I misread my topographic map and took a wrong turn at a river crossing. By the time I realized my error, the sun was already dipping below the ridgeline, casting long purple shadows across the forest floor. I was exhausted. My pack was digging painful red welts into my shoulders, and the temperature was dropping fast. Instead of pushing through another 2 miles in the dark to reach the official campsite, I decided to make camp in a small, grassy clearing about 20 yards off the main trail, right near a wooden signpost marking a 3-way trail junction. I pitched my green single-person dome tent, inflated my sleeping pad, and boiled some water on my pocket stove for a freeze-dried meal. By 9:30 p.m., the forest was pitch black. The canopy above was so thick it swallowed the starlight, leaving the woods in total, suffocating darkness. The only sound was the soft rustle of wind through the high fir trees and the distant roar of Cougar Falls a mile down the ridge. I crawled into my sleeping bag, pulled my beanie down over my ears, and kept my heavy tactical flashlight and a sharp hunting knife right beside my pillow. By 10 p.m., I was dead to the world. Around 1:45 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I didn't wake up slowly. I snapped wide awake, my heart instantly hammering against my ribs. The forest outside was dead quiet. No crickets, no wind, no distant water sound. Just a heavy, unnatural silence that felt like a weight pressing down on the tent canvas. Then, I heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was the distinct sound of slow, heavy footsteps walking along the gravel path of the main trail 20 yards away. I sat up quietly, holding my breath, telling myself it was just a black bear or a stray deer moving through the junction. The footsteps reached the wooden signpost and stopped. For 2 agonizing minutes, nothing moved. I lay completely frozen in my sleeping bag, staring up at the dark nylon roof of my tent, listening to the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. Then, the footsteps left the gravel trail. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Slow, deliberate steps began pushing through the high fern brush, moving straight toward my campsite. My mouth went completely dry. A wild animal doesn't walk toward a tent like that. Animals are skittish. They sniff, they pause, they circle. This was a smooth, heavy, bipedal stride coming directly for me. The footsteps stopped right outside my tent. Whatever was standing there was less than 3 feet away from my head, separated only by a thin layer of green polyester. I could hear breathing, heavy, ragged, wet gasps blowing softly against the rainfly. I reached down with a trembling hand and gripped the cold rubber handle of my flashlight, my other hand wrapping tightly around my hunting knife. Sipe. A faint, metallic scraping sound vibrated through the fabric. Out in the dark, someone was running their fingernails or something metal very slowly down the nylon zipper of my tent door. "I have a firearm!" I screamed, my voice cracking with pure, unadulterated panic. "I am armed! Back away from the tent right now!" The scraping stopped instantly. The wet breathing outside grew louder, right at the base of the tent door. Then, a voice spoke from the darkness. It wasn't a growl, and it wasn't a scream. It was a man's voice, raspy, dry, and terrifyingly calm. "I can see your boots through the mesh," he whispered. A cold shockwave of pure adrenaline slammed through my body. Before I could process what he said, a sudden, heavy impact slammed into the side of the tent. The aluminum poles snapped with a loud crack, and the roof caved in on top of me, pinning my legs inside the sleeping bag. I didn't think. I kicked frantically with my legs, slashed blindly through the nylon wall of the tent with my hunting knife, and scrambled out into the freezing night air on my hands and knees. I clicked on my flashlight and swept the beam across the campsite. Standing over my collapsed tent was a man. He was wearing filthy, oversized camouflage overalls, his hair matted with dirt and leaves. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken deep into his skull, and in his right hand, he was holding a heavy, rusty carpenter's hatchet. As the bright white beam hit his face, he didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just stared straight into the light and let out a high-pitched, warbling giggle that turned my blood to ice. He took one fast step toward me, raising the hatchet over his head. I didn't fight. I dropped my pack, dropped my flashlight, turned on my heel, and sprinted blind into the pitch-black woods. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, crashing through thickets, tearing my face on pine branches, and tripping over exposed roots in the dark. Behind me, I could hear him laughing and crashing through the brush, chasing me down the ridge. I ran for nearly 2 miles in complete darkness, guided only by the distant roar of the falls, until I finally stumbled out onto a paved Forest Service road around 3:30 a.m. I didn't stop running until I hit a brightly lit ranger check station 4 miles down the highway. I collapsed onto the porch, pounding on the door until the on-duty ranger opened up and called the county sheriff. At daybreak, 3 armed deputies and a K-9 unit went back up the trail to my campsite. When they found my gear, the tent was completely shredded to ribbons, slashed dozens of times with a sharp blade. My sleeping bag had been hacked to pieces, and all my food rations were gone. The K-9 unit tracked the man's scent 2 miles deeper into the wilderness, ending at an abandoned, half-collapsed hunter's cabin hidden in a ravine. Inside the cabin, deputies found stolen camping gear dating back 5 years, dozens of driver's licenses belonging to missing hikers, and a large chalkboard mounted on the wall. Written at the very top of the chalkboard, under the date of my trip, was a handwritten list detailing my exact movements from the moment I entered the woods. 3 p.m. Entered trail at mile marker 4. 5:30 p.m. Took wrong turn at river. 7 p.m. Setting up tent by the junction. 9 p.m. Lights out. He hadn't just stumbled upon my tent that night. He had been stalking me from the trees for 6 miles, waiting for me to pick a spot to sleep. They never caught the man in the camouflage overalls. I left Oregon that summer and haven't set foot in a national forest since. If I go camping now, it's at crowded state parks with paved roads, streetlights, and a cabin with a heavy deadbolt on the door. Double tap if your chest just tightened. Share this with someone who loves scary stories, and hit that follow button right now so you never miss another midnight nightmare.